What's up, Fight fans? UFC 269 is on its way. We have a lot of great fights to discuss. But first, if you enjoy the content we're creating, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can also find us on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and, of course, Spotify. So let's get right into it. First off, we have Raulian Paiva coming in as a positive 210 against Sean O'Malley at negative 300. Honestly, I kind of agree with these odds. I mean, Sean O'Malley's finally breaking his way into the top 15, and I think this is a perfect fight to do it. But we still have to see what he has against, some of the top guys. But at first glance, I'm really thinking O'Malley is going to take this via first-round technical knockout. Paiva's a bit too sloppy with his hands. He doesn't have a particularly strong chin, and I don't feel his wrestling is going to be enough to impose it on O'Malley. I see his grappling being used to relieve the pressure of O'Malley or maybe try to tire him out against the cage. He's coming up from flyweight. He's going to be the smaller fighter here. I see Paiva having a hard time keeping up with O'Malley's footwork. He tends to chase his opponents with wide shots. When they don't initiate the exchanges, I believe he has a hard time opening people up with feints. And I think O'Malley's going to be able to open him up with feints, make him want to chase him, and start off with those wide shots. You really don't want to start off with a wide shot. You want to throw a wide shot into a combo. And Paiva doesn't do this very often. He likes to use a wide shot to open up a wide shot. O'Malley hits hard, man, and is very crisp. I think he's going to take him out in the first or the second round. Paiva might be able to use some wrestling to get out of harm's way and squeeze his way into the second, but I think he'll engage in the grappling after being tagged. O'Malley might drop him and follow him to the mat for a finish, and he might have his offense neutralized. There's a few different ways that Paiva can keep himself in the fight for later rounds. But who knows? Paiva has some nasty kicks and it's pretty slick jiu-jitsu. But I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley via first-round TKO. Like I said, he might make it into the second. He might make it in the third and scrape it to a decision. But I really do see Sean O'Malley finishing this in the first round. Next up, we have number 6, Kai Kara-France, coming in at a positive 145 against Cody Garbrandt, number 7, minus 170. I just want to start by saying that seeing Cody at flyweight looks right. This next gen of bantamweight fighters are already looking too big for people like him and TJ Dillashaw. Kai has a good left hook, and he follows it up well with the uppercut. This could be a problem for Cody. Kara-France is also faster, or at least I believe he is. Cody, though, has the power. Kara-France does a good job finding the home for a straight, but Cody can land with some devastating power. If Kai is sloppy for even just a second, he gets caught by one of those big hooks of Garbrandt, that might be lights out. I hope Cody keeps the same attitude that he did with the Rob Font fight and the same kind of strategy. He did a much better job at not letting his hands drop after every hook that he threw. He approached the fight a little more technically. He can't go chasing him because I think France will light him up with that power straight, that like right down the middle. He times it so well. It's very fast, and I see that being a problem for Cody. And if he plants, pivots, and turns all that momentum into it, I think that's the end of the fight for Cody. I'm going to go with Kara-France via first-round knockout. I don't know if Cody's chin will be better at flyweight because the competition is smaller and he's the bigger guy now, or maybe his chin is worse because he's having to cut an extra 10 pounds. I really do see Kara-France catching Cody with either straight right down the middle at the perfect time or clipping Cody with a crisp left hook after a combo and when Cody is loading up on a big hook. Next up, we have the number 13, Santiago Ponzinibbio, coming in as a minus 115 favorite against the number 11, Geoff Neal. God, I love Santiago Ponzinibbio. I wish him nothing but the best. To think that he would come this far after going through what he went through. This man almost died. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, his career was supposed to be over. He had a bone infection. Got really bad, guys. And to think he's here today, still fighting and fighting really stiff competition. I mean, his fight with Miguel Baeza was a solid opponent. That kid is a prospect, and that fight was not handed to him by any means. He earned his name back into the hat for top contenders after that performance. When he first came back, he got knocked out by Li Jingliang. It was nasty. It was hard to watch for a Ponzinibbio fan, but he came back in and he fought a top young prospect, a hungry lion, and Miguel Baeza. So earned his name right back into the talks. I really wish he wouldn't have taken this fight, though, to be honest. This fight is always high pressure with Neal's power. Neal adjusts his punch mid-throw and puts people to sleep. Sometimes it looks as if he just touched them and they just shell up in fetal position. It's just so risky given where his body is in terms of recovery. A salty veteran would have been the safer route for him and his management team to put together. He just fought the up-and-comer. Let him get his feet wet a little more before putting him in there with the literal incarnation of NyQuil. Ponzinibbio needs to make Neal respect him quickly. Neal is much more dangerous if he's getting to set up the engagement and throw a combo. Neal likes to throw the straight, jab, left hook, uppercut when his opponent's back is against the cage. And I see him finding a little home there on Ponzinibbio's chin if Ponzinibbio isn't very careful or doesn't clinch up to try to relieve that pressure and reset the stand-up. Ponzinibbio, though, is very crafty, probably a little crazy. He sticks to fundamentals. He has a lot of heart. I see the grappling not playing too much of a role in this one. I think Ponzinibbio is a bit more technical on the ground, but I'd give the strength advantage to Neal. This fight really is a toss-up. It comes down to what fighters are walking out there on that given night. Either of these guys can beat each other on a certain amount of times out of 10. And I can't stress this enough about MMA and other combat sports too. But just because someone won doesn't mean that they're simply the better fighter. It's a matter of who wins on that night. That's what's important. That's what's being recorded. That's what's being documented. I want to say Ponzinibbio via decision. I want to. I really do. I just have that feeling that Neal is going to catch him with something in the second round. Neal has gotten a lot better at not chasing people. Sometimes lets him step into range thinking that he's not intending on throwing anything. Please, Lord, let me be wrong, but I'm going to go with Neal via second round knockout. I would love to see Ponzinibbio survive some damage, go through a bit of a war, and then overcome something by decision just because of all of what he's went through. But at the same time, Geoff Neal, he's a Dallas boy. I got to have Geoff Neal's back, and I really do think he's a solid contender for that division. Next up, we have the champion, the two-division champion, Amanda Nunes, coming in as minus 720 favorite against Julianna Pena sitting at plus 500. I don't want to say that these odds are fair, but I'm glad that some of these betting odds aren't as crazy as negative 1,100, and I think that's just too much, and I think that's not accounting for enough of the competition's skill set or the champion's weaknesses, because all the champions do have weaknesses, and that's what some people forget. Amanda Nunes is still immortal, but she's one of the baddest mortals on the planet. Nunes' opponents have been looking like deer in the headlights here lately. Megan Anderson looked as if she lost before she even got in there. That's not going to be the case with Julianna Pena. Pena is going to go in there, and she's going to fight her heart out. She's already fought the best of the best. She's also a grappler by nature, and I think that'll play into her hand quite nicely. Nunes has shown to gas out faster against people who barrage her with wrestling. Nunes' cardio has gotten better, but who knows how comfy she's gotten as the queen. I'm not sure exactly how effective Pena will be closing the distance. She kind of comes in slowly with her hands up, and she tries to grab clinch and do things from body lock. But I see a blast double working much more effectively against Nunes, because she will light you up on the way in. She has a long reach. She has nasty power in those hands. If Pena gets rocked, her chances of getting shrugged off from a takedown goes up drastically. I really do feel like Pena is going to try to utilize her takedowns through the body lock. I don't see that being very effective on Nunes. That was Ronda Rousey's approach, and ended up having her take too much damage before she even got into those exchanges. Pena needs to draw out the power straight of Nunes, dip under to really get a takedown on Nunes. But looking through Pena's fights, I see a glaring hole that I feel Nunes is going to be taken advantage of. Pena always dips her head to the right with almost everything that she does. She does on her jab, her feints, just to slip on the punch and get her head off the center line. Nunes is probably going to take a lot of things from Pena's fight with GDR. GDR showed where you can get her, and you get her right behind the ear, because GDR was catching her clean and almost flashed. Nope. Nunes is probably going to take a lot of things from Pena's fight with GDR, Jermaine Durandame, and catch her clean, because GDR was showing the consistency of what Pena does with her head movement, and she was starting to catch him with those long crosses. She would cross all the way over, and she'd tag her right behind the ear, and it was hurting Pena. But kudos to Pena. Pena's got heart, and her heart is one of the things I believe could possibly even get her a victory over Amanda Nunes. But I am going with Amanda Nunes via decision. I think Pena will have the cardio to keep up, and she might even have more success in those later rounds. I don't see Pena being fazed by the aura of invincibility that Nunes has kind of developed over the last few years, with her being utterly dominant in two-weight divisions now. I can see Nunes catching Pena right behind the ear due to her dipping her head off to the right too often and during specific things that she does throughout the fight. But I do think Pena's tough, and I think she's going to hold on and then go to a decision and maybe like a 49-46, where she wins either the fourth or the fifth round. Next up, we have the champion, Charles Oliveira, coming back to defend his title against Dustin Poirier, the #1 contender. Charles Oliveira actually coming in as an underdog, plus 140 to Dustin Poirier's negative 160. I went back and forth on who might win this fight since it was first announced. I still have no idea. Yet another toss-up fight from the UFC. One thing that sticks out to me is Dustin Poirier excels in close boxing range, and that is where Oliveira wants to be if he's going to engage in the grappling. I think Oliveira will really try to impose his grappling in this one, and I see him having success doing that. Poirier is going to have to take angles and switch stances as he closes in on Oliveira. He definitely doesn't want to get caught with that crisp left hook that we saw Michael Chandler get caught on because he was keeping his head too far on the center line. He was really just going forward and backwards. But I see Poirier hurting him at some point in this fight. Oliveira has a tendency of keeping his head straight up, and he isn't the best at getting in and getting out. He's more of a plotty, thought-out fighter. I see Poirier really finding success in the inside boxing, landing some uppercuts, sneaky hooks in the pocket. We will be releasing another video taking a closer look into this fight, but ultimately I'm going to go with Oliveira via third-round rear naked choke for now. I see him getting in on a body lock, dipping underneath one of Poirier's hooks, pushing him to the cage, and eventually taking his back. It might even be against the cage that he gets his rear naked choke. He might not have him all the way laid out on the ground. Oliveira is probably the slickest BJJ practitioner that we've ever seen inside the octagon. That's hard to say because we've had some BJJ legends, but the stats speak for themselves, and Oliveira is still competing in pro BJJ competitions. I don't know if his wrestling will be enough, but it doesn't take a wrestler, like the best wrestler, to take someone's back. Jiu-jitsu guys are really good at doing that. I could also see Poirier taking this via second-round TKO. It's such a hard fight to call, but I'm going with Oliveira for now. Okay, guys, with that, we will wrap up our thoughts on UFC 269. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you disagree with our picks, make sure to berate us down in the comments. Remember, this is not a sport. You don't play fight.